With the upcoming release of Candyman, I thought it'd be a good time to revisit Candyman. The 1992 horror film was adapted from a Clive Barker short story and was written and directed by Bernard Rose, also known for... Yeah, I don't know any of these movies. The film follows Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen, a University of Chicago graduate student conducting research on urban legends. The topic of her work leads her to learn of the Candyman, a mysterious killer who appears after saying his name 5 times in front of a mirror.
But she said his name the last time.
Candyman.
She turned out the lights. And what he saw turned his hair white from shock.
This was my first time watching the film, actually, and I had somewhat low expectations for it. This era of horror features a lot of movies that I like, but don't find particularly scary for my tastes. With that said, Candyman was a pleasant surprise for me. I found its story to be genuinely engaging and the horror elements to be incredibly effective and disturbing.
Be my victim.
I tend to like horror films that operate more like dark dramas, where immense tragedy or psychological trauma tends to be what fuels the horror. Recent examples like Hereditary, The Babadook, and It Comes at Night are ones that really worked for me, and this one feels similar to them. But there are certain aspects that don't work perfectly, and there are certain things that definitely date it. Interestingly, the movie starts off somewhat light on the horror. Around halfway through, the film makes a hard right turn, taking a fairly dramatic shift in tone and structure. The first half of the film is a somewhat straightforward mystery, with just about the only thing there to remind you that you're watching a horror film are a few tense moments and far too many jump scares. It kind of feels as though a studio exec read the script and said, hey, this is great, but there's no horror in 50% of your horror films, so they shoved them in there. They're easily ignorable and don't detract too much from the rest of the movie, but the scares in the first half pale in comparison to the latter half of the film, which is just wrought with tension from start to finish.
It's a door sound effect, and we all have it. This is it, and it's in the film.
Yeah. On that same note, the stereotypical opening kill feels somewhat superfluous, but again, I know we have to sell this to general audiences, so it does its job enough in setting the tone. It just feels like cynical studio meddling in an otherwise very non-conventional film. I will say I always find it funny when movies from the 80s and 90s portray their bad boys like 1950s greasers. Like, it's way more common than you think. Look out for it, you won't be able to unsee it.
Hey, up yours with a twirling lawnmower.
Also, does the husband character wear the same leather jacket prop? Hey, editor Dima, this is writer Dima. Can you compare the footage? I'll record 2 line readings. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Okay, thanks. No, it isn't. The titular Candyman, portrayed by Tony Todd, is a pretty dang scary movie monster. The first time he meets Helen in the parking lot is super creepy, and all of his future appearances are extremely tense and often disturbing. I also feel as though the movie uses gore very appropriately to accentuate scary intense scenes rather than rely on the gore as a crutch to make the audience feel as though something scary is happening. The gore and other scary elements are well motivated, which helps you as the audience member experience the tension alongside our lead. Thematically, it's about the power of urban legends.
See, these stories are modern oral folklore. They are the unself-conscious reflection of the fears of urban society.
The Candyman is a story that children tell to scare one another.
I can't say nothing. A Candyman'll get me.
It's co-opted by a gang leader as a way to give himself more power. It's about how a story can terrorize and shape a small community for generations, and how these stories propagate, grow, and evolve.
Scared for my child. They ain't never gonna catch him. Who? Candyman.
The entire latter half of the film, where Helen's life spirals out of control, is due to the Candyman punishing her for not believing in him.
Believe in me. Be my victim.
This is another scary element that works really well for me. I'm really phobic about horrible things happening that are out of my control, and the movie taps into that very effectively. The movie isn't perfect, however, and there are some elements that drag it down. I thought the final 15 or so minutes were a little clunky, and I feel as though some of its messaging gets lost in its ending. There are some moments that are definitely cheesy and somewhat laughable, like when the husband character says Helen's name 5 times to summon her at the end.
Helen.
There are just a few moments here or there that left me scratching my head that I feel are what keep this from elevating to a true classic of modern horror. There's also some white savior stuff that comes across as a little iffy with a modern day lens. What's really got me scratching my head are the fact that there are sequels. Now, I haven't seen the 2 90s ones, but I know Tony Todd returns in them despite his Candyman dying in this one. I feel as though bringing him back kind of undermines the entire message of this film. Oh well. Hey, by the time this review is done, I'll have seen the new movie. I don't plan on reviewing it, so hey, editing Dima, what did you think of the movie? Cool. But what about this movie? Does the original Candyman hold up? Yes, it really does. I found Candyman to be a fairly gripping mystery and a very tense and engaging horror film. There were plenty of moments where I was disturbed and creeped out, which is about the highest recommendation I can give to a horror film. There are a few places in its execution that date it somewhat, and there are some elements that don't entirely work here or there, but all in all, I very much enjoyed Candyman, and it's immediately become one of my more favorite horror films. Thanks for watching.
All right. Candyman, 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 Candyman. Candyman.
Thunderpants.